the Center for Creative Entrepreneurship, and you are listening to a Global Industry Spotlight, a conversational series focused on providing resources and insight for the creative entrepreneur. We are here to connect with you, network, discuss business, and all things creative entrepreneurship. We are streaming live out of the Comcast Business Startup Studio, a room designed for Chicago's small business community, located at 2112, Chicago's first music, film, and tech incubator. We have important news. We have a new website. Anna worked on it for several months. Good job, Anna. Please go to ccglobal.org to check it out. It was created with our community of creative entrepreneurs in mind, to serve as a resource, a place where you can find jobs, events, workshops, education, and mentorship. So we are now including office hours on Friday, where you can tap in and talk with us about what you're looking to do or what you're interested in. Again, visit ccglobal.org and let us know what you think. Any feedback is very much appreciated. Today's Global Industry Spotlight is on Melissa Villanueva, CEO and founder of Brewpoint Coffee in the Chicagoland suburbs. Over the past 8 years, Brewpoint Coffee has grown to 4 coffee shops, a coffee roastery, an event space, and wholesale operations. Melissa is proud of building a thriving business that she 100% owns and leads, focused on social and environmental impact. Brewpoint Coffee has been featured in Forbes, Fast Company, Sprudge, and other publications for their mission on building an equitable and inclusive business ecosystem. We are really excited to have Melissa today.
Thank you so much for having me, Daniel.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, we met at the Dell Tech competition, but congratulations on winning. And I think what has been really exciting for me is last week I talked with Maja, who has kind of started with a small business and grown to different locations, right? So I get to talk to another, entrepreneur who has really expanded operations and is growing.
Yeah.
And so I definitely want to jump right into it. So take us just kind of from like I'm going to start a coffee shop space, and then let's talk about, kind of growing it.
Yeah. So I'll kind of just I'll do a quick synopsis and then go into the details, right? So have you ever looked on Craigslist for an espresso machine only to buy a coffee shop instead? Yeah.
Really?
So, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And it's Craigslist.
Yes. Yeah. I literally was looking on Craigslist for this espresso machine, found this coffee shop with my 7-month boyfriend, now husband.
Okay.
We looked at it, I think our stomachs dropped, and there's this element of just knowing this was a perfect opportunity that we couldn't pass up, even though we had no business plan, barely enough finances to make it work because we were both unemployed.
Okay.
And we bought it within a month with the help of our families.
Right.
And that was 8.5 years ago. Now I have the 4 coffee shops, coffee manufacturing, and event space. I'm also the co-author of a book called Starting and Running a Coffee Shop, and I do economic development work for the city of Elmhurst as well. And so it has been this wild ride of a journey.
Yeah. I
was in the corporate world before Brewpoint for 3 years, and before that I was fairly young, so I just graduated, got into corporate as a recruiter, and I felt like I checked off all those boxes of what it meant to be successful after college, but I felt like maybe I'm this entitled millennial that's just not happy still, and I'm like, why am I not happy?
Right.
And it was meeting my now husband Angelo, where I met him and I was telling him how I was feeling. He's like, sometimes, you just gotta pull the trigger and take the leap. And that was my sign to quit my job. It was the first conversation him and I had. He thought he ruined my life. And I went to the Philippines to do a self-discovery trip as a Filipino American. And with those 2 months overseas, really got caught by this vision of coffee is a great foot in the door to build up community. I had worked at Starbucks in high school, and it was this job that I kept looking back on that I really loved, just that authentic connection between a customer and a barista and the customers with each other. And it's daily, people can afford a $3, $4, $5 cup of coffee on a daily basis. And so it ends up being this just really authentic space. And so, we started the first coffee shop with no plan, barely enough finances to make it work. It took us a month or 2 to hire our first employee. But we were just really dedicated to getting a little bit better every single day. And it was our team that really drove us to grow, because, it was clear to me that I could probably, with my husband, make a living from one coffee shop,
Mm,
but we probably couldn't really pay a living wage or have buying power that made a big difference unless we grew. And so we really went from one shop, and after about 2 years, we're like, okay, I think we're going to grow. And between years 3 and 4, we scaled to 3 coffee shops and a coffee roastery. And as exciting as that was, and as much support as we got from the city of Elmhurst, we're also in our Elmhurst Public Library. We had really good deals to make it work. It was like years 3 to 5 were probably the most difficult for us. Just me feeling out of my element of one shop to multiple, really wanting to be there for my team, but really spread thin between everything, and just trying to figure out how to make it work. And so from there, years 5 and 6, my leadership team sat me down and essentially was just like, something needs to change. And I remember really taking that to heart and deciding to get back on the ground level and just figure out how to bring this all together. And in year 6, 2019, we started to rebuild our team and rebuild the infrastructure. And then the pandemic hit.
right, so getting all ready for the pandemic. Let's get set up perfectly,
Yeah.
and then, okay.
Yeah.
Tell me about, so I love this Craigslist thing.
Mm.
That's really interesting, but how, the moment as you're running the first coffee shop,
Sure.
right? So you're running it yourself, you hire your first employee. When did you realize, wait a second, we can actually expand this? What was the shift? Or what did you like, what was the vision? Or you just looked at the finance of it and you're like, hey, this is kind of, there's a little bit of a formula I've discovered. That we can now expand.
Yeah, I would say that it wasn't based on data or smart decision making necessarily.
Oh,
It was based on like this kind of like bright-eyed, bushy-tailed
I love it.
naivete.
Right.
Like the same thing that drove me to buy a coffee shop on Craigslist
Like, yeah.
is the thing that drove me to grow.
Right.
And it was just kind of this scrappy, like, we'll figure it out. I would say like my best skill set is like casting a vision and like getting people excited and delegating, right?
Okay.
And so my team is far smarter than I am in terms of the different areas that they're experts in. And then, finding collaborators, whether that's, organizations like 2112 or, we work a lot with like Allies for Community Business.
Rowan, do you know
Yeah.
Rowan?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Rowan's he's one of my mentors.
Yeah. I think you're on the website.
So
Right?
actually, can I tell you something really
Yeah.
quick? On the way here, I was driving in my Uber, or riding my Uber, talking to my husband, and I'm passing a billboard, and I see my face on it with Allies for Community Business, and I knew it was coming. I just didn't know where or like
Right.
what,
Okay.
and so I was like, I
These
snapped
are-
some photos.
These are signs though, right?
Yeah.
I feel like there's always moments in life when there's a sign that's
Yeah.
just like, thank you.
Yeah,
Like an acknowledgement of
Yeah.
the work I put in.
yeah. And this was literally a sign. like,
Right.
a billboard. So I was just like,
It's a sign and it's a sign.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a nice moment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So as I've talked to a lot of different entrepreneurs, building a team seems to be such an essential part of being able to continue growth, right? And it sounds like this is a bit of an expertise of yours. Of one, having the vision and being like, here's the vision of what Brewpoint does, and this is what we do, and being able to find the right people to fulfill that vision and make it successful.
Yeah.
Talk about what your strategies are around, setting the vision and being able to execute with the team.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that the vision has grown alongside of, myself of like what I want this to be. Unfortunately, I'm, someone that's kind of a verbal processor. My whole team knows this. And the values between like what changes from year 1 to now are the same.
Mm-hmm.
But the way in which it can, like the plan to get there, the operations behind it, the actual opportunities, those shift. And so I think that like it has been 8.5 years of kind of sharing what the world could be like, who I am, what I want to see accomplished, and try to figure out how to build systems and ecosystems to get there, right? And so, everyone on my team, specifically the ones, I work a lot with my leadership team, I mean, I think I've been really grateful. My whole leadership team, including my husband, they've been with me 6 years plus.
Okay.
So it's not perfect, but there's this trust that like we are always trying to stay in line with our values. We're trying to missionally accomplish something together. And we're just trying to take care of each other, right? And so as we're trying to build something really unique in our industry.
And I see too, I have a friend of mine who started a coffee shop in Wicker Park, Metric Coffee.
Yeah.
And then, I saw them open up another coffee shop, and then they opened up a roastery.
Yep.
And it seems like that's just a natural progression as you're growing coffee business, or is it just what you felt was the best thing to do?
It's
And then it said, sorry, wholesale operations after that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because I would say that like there's a lot of different routes that a coffee shop can take. For us, coffee shops are really important because of the space it creates. And I have like a whole thought process on like on community space and who should pay for it. Should it be coffee shops when Starbucks are scaling down their
Right.
spaces? But I will say that like in terms of business model, coffee roasting is a whole other business. Like it can complement, it can support cafes, but it is a whole other thing. And more often than not, I kind of see like coffee shops want to go into something like that, but then have to scale back into what they're really good at. The one thing that I am really grateful for in terms of us sticking with manufacturing our own product is that especially coffee is like in a really tough situation, just like a lot of food related industries, because of climate change. Our crops we're seeing, it's global, so it's not farmed here in the U.S., but our farms are facing half the inventory and a lot of shifts because weather shifting changes like their plans on a year-to-year basis. So they have a lot less crop, and thereby their crop is a lot more expensive. And so especially coffee farmers are selling at a really rapid rate. And so in us roasting, in us having built direct trade relationships with like our farmers in Costa Rica, we have the ability to know what's going on the ground and be able to maintain a relationship with our product so we don't have to lose it or lose our quality. And so roasting is one of those things where it's like I think it wasn't necessarily a no-brainer, but at this position that I'm in, I'm glad that I have both the cafes and the roastery.
Right. Okay. Going back to one of your original points about building community and how that seems to be kind of a core value of the business. Is how can we build, intentional community spaces? I think the Surgeon General just came out with a report about how the health issues that come from being isolated and how culturally a lot of people are just really isolated. And obviously, I think there's many reasons for that. But technology has definitely kept us in our rooms. And coffee spaces are absolutely wonderful places for families to enjoy, students, workers. It's kind of almost in a lot of ways the last convening space that's open to everyone, which I think is really important. Talk about how you feel the role of a coffee shop exists within the community.
Yeah, no, it's evolved too. But when I got into the coffee market, Starbucks was still talking about this, third space model, right? Where it's not home, it's not work, it's this other place that you go to that you feel some level of home. And coffee shops, I think, have been that, right? Where it doesn't have an agenda. You get the product that you already like, you're excited about, and you come and either are there to connect with someone or you're there to have your own like Zen moments. And people who don't even drink coffee associate coffee shops as like a positive thing that they want to go to, right? And so the issue that I'm seeing is that, with coffee margins being at a really like all-time low of not even breaking even sometimes for a lot of smaller businesses, who pays for the space? When you buy a coffee from a coffee shop, you're buying coffee, you're not buying space. And so who's paying for that? It's the owner of the coffee shop, right? And so, Starbucks is heading more and more into a drive-through model, less space, because if they don't have to have 4, 5, 10,000 square feet and they can operate everything in 1,000, like why pay for that extra piece? And so that's something I've been kind of thinking a lot about because, we have a 4,000 square foot space in Elmhurst, And part of the reason we were able to make that work is because the city gave us TIF funding to be able to renovate like this 4,000 square foot loading dock. It's this cool kind of hip space. But if I didn't get that funding, like I should only have cafes that are like 500 to 1,000 square feet to make the numbers work. And so if we want to see coffee shops, which we know are huge pieces of like happiness levels in community, who's going to pay for it?
Right.
Should it be municipalities? Should it be combined with nonprofits? I mean, no offense to banks who kind of combo with cafes, but it's a different vibe that people don't trust as much.
Yeah.
Like
the Capital
yeah.
Capital One Cafe. I think there's one I went to in Park. And absolutely the vibe is just very different.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the warmth.
Yeah.
I feel like that more neighborhood style coffee shops have.
No, and I mean, I've been kind of thinking more and more that like, what would it look like for some like an organization that has the money to sponsor these spaces without affecting like within the four walls, right? And so, what if there was a Brewpoint Coffee sponsored cafe, and there's ways in which that entity benefits from what's important to them without really like affecting the culture and the feel and the vibe of the space,
right?
And I think there's ways, right? Because companies like mine were also these conduits and bridges between the older generations and the new generation. One of the things that like I'm so excited about with working with the city developers is I've been able to pioneer a lot of the entrepreneurship events with the city as an economic development commissioner, and that's been fascinating to me because events that Brewpoint curates or I help curate really can tap into more the Gen Z and the millennial market, which is a group that municipalities and chambers have a harder time cracking into these days. And so there's just a lot of there's a lot of opportunity for like brands like mine to be able to be a connector and to build.
Yeah, and I love the idea of like coffee shops, the spaces that they're in being funded from outside sources. Because as we know, there are community spaces, there are public spaces that are funded by municipalities and cities. And it would be interesting that combination of creating really an inclusive space that has great coffee that makes people happy, that's open to the public, it's a resource. I mean, that's what you're talking about, right? Like you're putting together events that are resources for people to learn, to connect with each other. I mean, that's what 2012 is. It's like, how can we build these spaces? But I love this idea. It's really, it's really fascinating, and I think important in terms of the future of community and of how they interconnect, like you were saying, new generations, and how there is a place. Like coffee shops have always been the spot. And dig on Starbucks, but Starbucks it's not going to do it, right? That's not their thing. Their thing is drive through. So I love to do a focus on social and environmental impact. Talk about what initiatives you've taken to make sure that's a core part of Brewpoint.
Yeah, so some internal pieces in terms of like our product itself, right? So a lot of times when people look at specialty coffee or coffee at large, they're kind of like, oh, is it USDA organic or is it fair trade? And unfortunately, I mean, those are two different things, but some of the models are quite outdated in terms of stamps and approvals. And I mean, it goes back to the question of who pays for it, right? It's the farmers who pay for those certifications. And that doesn't work if you're trying to work with small like farms.
Right.
And so
you're saying that some small farms might be completely organic.
Oh yeah.
But they can't pay for the.
No.
Oh, that's racist. I love that. That makes so much sense.
Well, and fair trade is one of those things where it's like that's also that's one that's I would say is quite outdated because like I think what it is that it's like $1.40 to be like that's the standard for fair trade, but that's like right now we're seeing that it's really should be $2.50, $3,
right?
In order to really hit that. And so for Brewpoint, I mean, we don't really care if farmers have fair trade certified or anything of that sort, but we want to make sure that we're paying $2 above those standards.
Right.
And so on average, we, average above that. And then we also donate to World Coffee Research with every pound purchased. With 60% of our farms are direct trade with our partners in Costa Rica, majority women-owned farms as well. We work with an amazing individual called Marianella. She not only is she a coffee farmer in Costa Rica and lives in the U.S. and does all the sales, she does all the import exports and is making a huge difference to the farmers in Costa Rica and to suppliers or coffee companies like us. And so those are a handful of things. In terms of ecosystem, it for me is about how we make decisions. And so if I can go to the pandemic really quick, because I think that this is a small anecdote of kind of how we make decisions under pressure. Just like many other companies, we had, our leadership team sat down on Zoom the first day that we realized we had to shut down, and we were like, what are our options? What can we do? The biggest worry that we have is our team, in terms of just making sure that they're okay. Everyone's worried. And a leadership team sat down and decided we had 3 cafes. We were going to condense everything into one walk-up window. Mm-hmm. So, there'd be as much safety as we possibly could have between the community and our team. We would test our team regularly. Well, I guess we couldn't test back then, but we did our safety measures internally so our team could be together. And we announced it to our larger team and essentially said, for all those who want to continue working during this time, here's how many hours we have. Can we divide and conquer to make sure that everyone has what they need? And a lot of people, a handful of people did self-select out just based on what was happening. Right. But everyone who wanted to stay, stayed. So we didn't have to let anyone go. And we made decisions based on our team versus worries about finance, which, the truth is that without things like PPP, those decisions we made would have really, we would have had to close some of our businesses if it didn't come through.
Right.
But because of PPP, we ended up being in a much stronger position. And we could continue making decisions, not purely out of data, but based on people. And so in terms of ecosystem, in terms of social, what makes us different socially is that, we make some decisions off of data, but we make a lot of decisions off of people.
Right. Well, it sounds like it. It sounds like, when I asked you the question about how do you expand, you were like, well, we just thought, I was like, this would be a good idea.
Yeah.
But I think in the long run, it sounds like you're building an extraordinary company. Mm-hmm. And if you're connected with the people and you're connected with the product and you're in touch, the data is always important, but there's obviously, it's your business, right? So your ability to be, connected on an intellectual and emotional level makes it better, right? You're able to make the decision.
Yeah.
And data can support that if it's needed to, but I love this idea of just being able to be like, our team comes first, we have to make sure that we're giving them opportunities to be successful. Sounds like you're a pretty awesome boss. I'm like, wow, this is, it's great. And I think it's exciting to just meet you and also hear about even the vision, right, of these funded community spaces that, where there's coffee inside of it, but the coffee shop is not one funded space.
Well, and I think that's important to note that, if you are a consumer of coffee, right, for something like Brewpoint, it's the purchasing of our product is what helps us sustain our ecosystem, right? It is when you go to a coffee shop kind of thinking about, okay, I'm paying for this cup, but if I'm there for 3, 4, 5, how many hours and I'm getting free Wi-Fi, how else am I supporting the system and how it works, right? Because, a cup of coffee pays for the cup of coffee. It doesn't pay for everything else you get to.
The margins are really small, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's great to talk to you because I love coffee.
Yeah.
I love going to coffee shops, and I've definitely been struck with how expensive coffee is.
Yes.
To get a solid coffee drink and maybe a baked good or something, it's close to $10.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to support it and businesses. Right? It's noticeable.
Yep.
Right? You're like, wow, I was not. Yeah. This has really jumped. Yeah. And the hope is that it's jumped because, the farmers are making more money. Like that, I think it's fine if the prices are going up because people are also able to sustain, you're hiring, you're building, you're growing, you're obviously, helping cities develop economically. With opening up shops and providing jobs for, the citizens. But I've always kind of wondered like why it got so expensive, right?
Well, I mean, exactly.
And
It's
you
all
pay
these
for the
things.
space.
Exactly. It's
Right.
the space, it's the product, it's the farms, but it's, part of it too is like, and there's a lot of people in between, right? And, and depending on the business model, depending on the scale, depending on your access to capital, because it partially just comes down to access to capital as
Right.
well. Like when you go to a coffee company that works with direct trade, that has the ability to cut out some middle pieces
Right.
so that like farmers can actually get paid more.
Right.
Otherwise, there's a lot of different types of distribution that happens in between, and then everyone is trying to get their cut because it's not just the farmers; it's also the fact that staffing is more expensive and cost of goods across the board are more expensive, and so it really is hard to say like, it's all of these reasons is why coffee is more expensive to the consumer. And if you think about it, like, okay, think about wine or even like craft beer, but wine, there's not so good wine and there's amazing wine. And the difference that people are willing to pay for that is extreme. Right? Like, I don't know, $5 to $5,000 in terms of, a bottle of wine or something of that sort. Whereas for coffee, it's so much smaller in terms of what people are willing to pay. And does that mean that specialty coffee can exist? Does it mean the quality isn't appreciated in their product for the price? People are only willing to pay this much, so this is the quality that we're able to get. Because for farmers, it takes a lot of money and time to get to that quality. And if they're only getting twice as much as they would for commodity coffee, when they really should be getting 5, 10 times as much, like how are they going to make it work? So I don't think it's a surprise that especially coffee farmers are selling.
Yeah. And how do you deal with fear or doubt?
The first word that came to my mind was like compartmentalizing.
All right, I'm not gonna deal with this now. I'll put that over there.
Yeah, I do think that like I'm like, it is kind of funny because I am aware that I'm fairly good at it.
Right, maybe
Like,
too good at it. Right?
Yeah, but as long as I'm aware that it's there and I get
Yeah.
to it, I don't let it like, kind of seep into everything else. Like I'm a big fan of therapy. I'm a big fan of like working through everything.
Right.
But like I do try to figure out what is the purpose of my fear and anxiety. And like if I'm noting it and I know that I can't like really control it, then I tackle it. So whether that is going to therapy or that is like, creating solutions with my team or just venting, right? Like there's a lot of different aspects there. Because at the end of the day, I am the leader of my company and like it isn't, it's on me to be the best leader I can be. And so fear and anxiety doesn't tend to help. And so I need to take care of myself to take care of my like ecosystem and team.
Yeah, because it spreads from the top. And you can definitely, I've been in work situations where, people who are in charge have a lot of fear and anxiety. And you see it, how it just seeps into everything.
Yeah. But it's also, it's interesting because like sometimes I will talk to my leaders and like it's also important for them to know that I also feel those things.
You're not a robot.
And so every once in a while I'll mention they're like, oh, you also feel this way, and they feel that camaraderie, and I was like, oh, I should probably talk about this without like giving them my anxiety.
Right.
Like I just want to make sure that like I am, the best leader I can be for them and whatever that means. But I definitely, it's one of those like when you're unwinding at night, you're like, okay, what are the feelings that are creeping up? What are the things that I have control over and what are the things I don't? And
I really, and I appreciate conversations and listening to people who talk about just any kind of, sort of vulnerability or fear, when someone is consistently talking about all their success and how great they are. And there's a time and a place for everything.
Yeah.
But at the same time, authentic connections are when you can be a little open, right? Of like, oh, this didn't go so well, or being able to. And I think people relate to that, and
Yeah.
connect with that in a more authentic way
Yeah.
than just hearing about, either how great things are all the time or how bad things are all the time.
On that note, I would say that like it's interesting because sometimes I'm not sure if it's fear or if it's just like experience that has made me more cautious than I have been in the past. Because kind of all of the more gut decisions of buying this coffee shop on Craigslist and deciding to scale the business without really knowing what we were doing. Like I think at this point now, I look at opportunity and like I'm excited about impacts. I'm excited about like the ways to get there, but I'm a lot more cautious in how to get there because I have a company and a team and people to care for that like my decisions impact, right? And so I do find myself more cautious, but I'm not necessarily fearful. And in terms of fear, it is kind of that separation of like, what do I have control over? Because within that, I can tackle those things and not feel fear around. I will say the things that are not in my control are the things that keep me up at night.
Right.
But I feel like that's a lot of us who just see what's going on in the
Right.
world.
You're like,
So
it's not going too well.
yeah, it's like, okay, maybe I should have like some sort of plan B or just like really enjoy every moment I can with the people I love.
Right.
So
I know, man. I know. It is, it can be heavy
yeah.
at moments.
Oh, yeah.
And,
Absolutely.
yeah.
We went through the pandemic, and I feel like it is one of those things where it's like, on a business standpoint, like I do think one of our strengths is the fact that we can pivot, like that, that word is used so often, but we can be flexible to like what opportunities can be. But yeah, the thought of like something else like that happening, which, not necessarily the exact same thing, like is something that I think business owners or any leaders should prepare for and be aware of and find the balance of how do you take care of how do you invest in yourself so that if and when something happens, you can be the best leader you can be.
Right.
So I'm just really grateful. Like I'm really grateful to have, I guess like the resources and like this kind of ecosystem to steward. And I want to do it the best I can and try to find a balance of, not making it about me, but also like, I don't know, continuing to build
Yeah.
something that makes a difference.
And what will you not compromise on?
Just generally?
Yeah. Or in your career?
In my career. That's an interesting question. I mean, on a personal standpoint, I will say that like, it is more this internal piece. Like I want to be able to enjoy life, and I want to be able to be present in the moments and not feel like, I'm in situations like this and like, I want to feel like I'm, being able to be a person that connect with a person, right? And when I notice that like I'm moving too fast or I'm doing too many things that like keep me from being human, not that I can like not.
No, I relate to that 100%.
I know that something's wrong, and I know
Yeah.
that I have to change something. And so that's something on a personal standpoint that I've become more and more not willing to compromise. But in terms of everything else, I think my mindset is that, being a business owner, the truth is that like they're perpetuating harm just based on the systems at large. Like it's, we're in a capitalist system. We have all these other things that we can't control. But if I can try to build an ecosystem that does a little bit more good than bad overall, and this is kind of my mindset as a person, generally speaking, like it is worth doing because like doing the other option is doing nothing. And so I don't want to make it sound like everything we do is like, perfect by any means. It is this it is the constant compromise, but the hope is as we scale, as we do more, as we do better, we can compromise less and less and less. And so that is like my hope and my thing I'm not willing to compromise is to do less than, to not progress in that direction.
Yeah, and I love that. And I was driving the other day, and sometimes I become very overwhelmed with capitalism. And just how everything is, trying to be sold to me, and even like on the phone, and it can be very, it feels not authentic and not healthy.
Yeah,
to a certain
oh,
degree.
sure.
Right, and but at the same time, we live in a capitalistic society,
and benefit,
and we benefit from it, absolutely, 100%. And trying to build businesses and ecosystems and communities that can thrive and just be a little better in those systems, I think is great work. So it's really awesome to hear that is the focus for you, and also all the growth and success that you've had, and just hearing kind of how you run your business, what you think about. I think for a lot of people out there who are listening, they'll be inspired just kind of by your approach of just how to run a business, and what you care about.
Yeah.
And you're pretty calm,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, which is awesome. So before we head out today, one recommendation of a movie, book, podcast, song.
Yeah. Well, actually, so if you're talking about a podcast, I just was interviewed from a good friend, Angela Howard, Social Responsibility at Work.
Mm-hmm.
And I just love it. It's just like, it's kind of like Brene Brown adjacent in terms of the work that she does with, like industrial psychology, IO work, and things of that sort. So that's one podcast I'd highlight. And then I know that you and I were talking about Beef earlier and A24. I have been on an A24 kick. I feel like I've just been like looking for movies.
So what are some of the ones that you like from A24?
I mean, I did really like Beef.
Yeah.
I did like, especially the ending of it. In terms of, I was just like, oh my goodness, this is a trip.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
And so I will say the other one I liked recently was X. It's a little edgy in terms of like describing it too much, but it is like kind of a slasher movie adjacent.
Yeah.
I will say I've been, as someone who's like so much in work and impact, like what I consume on a media standpoint tends to be more like something that is like totally separate.
Yeah.
And so I kind of like B-horror.
Yeah.
But I feel like A24 takes it this next level where it's not like so predictable and kind of dumb, and it makes it artistic and like just it's surprising. And so I really appreciated that kind of genre of things.
I love that. B-horror, that's great. Well, thank you so much for coming here today. It's great to be connected with you, taking the time. I know you have some exciting plans for the day. You have a full day ahead.
Yeah.
Just for our audience out there, what are some things they can, look from Brewpoint, or some things that you have upcoming?
Sure. No, thank you for asking. So I'll say one past thing really quick. So I did just have probably one of our biggest entrepreneurship events. It was the biggest that we've ever had, called Makers and Shakers, a couple of weeks ago, and that was an entrepreneurship event. For our community in Elmhurst, but it really spanned from like Pilsen to Aurora. And for me, that was a moment of, it was 220 entrepreneurs all in a room. Rowan was actually the keynote speaker.
Awesome.
And it was this moment for me of like, I want to see a more diverse and inclusive landscape for entrepreneurship in the Chicagoland area. And this is a moment in proof that like we're building.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking forward to more of that. Tonight we have an event for inclusion and retention and guides to stronger staffing. And so we have events like that in the lineup in partnership with the city of Elmhurst. But in terms of like the company itself, we're going through an exciting rebranding that'll be happening this summer. So we'll have new packaging. And we're scaling our business. So the hope is that, we have a couple big things in the works right now. It takes some time. but by next year, I do hope that people will be able to see us in grocery stores and a lot of other, scalable opportunities, not just for ourselves, but for everyone part of the Brewpoint system. So, but if people are looking to follow us at Brewpoint Coffee on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and our website is brewpointcoffee.com.
Yeah, which we can put below on the screen so people can check it out. Well, thank you again for joining me today. It's been wonderful to talk with you and be connected, and definitely check out everything that Melissa is doing with Brewpoint Coffee. It's quite extraordinary, even with these events of entrepreneurship. I think it's inspiring for me to hear about, how different people are building spaces for entrepreneurs, especially entrepreneurs who maybe are marginalized or haven't had the access or haven't been connected to the networks, to make them great entrepreneurs, right? And to give them the right networks, the right resources, and the right spaces to grow. So Congratulations on that.
It's awesome. So awesome. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Yeah,
It's
no,
been great getting to know you as well.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Again, my name is Daniel Crane. I'm the program director for the Center for Creative Entrepreneurship, and this was another episode of Global Industry Spotlight, a conversational series focused on providing resources and insight for the creative entrepreneur. We are streaming out of the Comcast Business Startup Studio, located at 2112, Chicago's first music, film, and tech incubator. Thank you to Comcast Business and Shore for providing the tools necessary to make our programming possible. Visit our newly branded website, thanks to Anna, cceglobal.org, to register and check out all the things that we have going on. Find us on Instagram and Facebook, and tune in next week for another episode of Global Industry Spotlight, next Thursday, May 11th, with Fiona McEntee, JD, Managing Attorney at McEntee Law Group. Can't wait to chat with her. Wishing everyone a great end to their week. Take care, send us a message, let us know what you think. Well, let us know what you want to learn. What are some of the things that you're struggling with as an entrepreneur or are curious about? Take care.